Hey everybody, Greg Poole here at Bojunkie Media, bojunkie.com. It's time for another bonus podcast. We've been setting them up and knocking them down since the Vegas shoot, of course, for good reason. Lots of folks to talk to. I am still communicating with the young lady that won women's father, so we can get that lined out. I'm going to be reaching out. Mark Rubio gave me the number for the young man's father who won back to back in the championship young adult. So we'll be doing that as well. But in the meantime, and this is how a lot of these conversations, excuse me, this is how a lot of these podcasts actually take place is just talking shit via text with somebody. And me and today's guest, we text pretty often and have some great conversations. He's, obviously if you're watching, you already see who he is. For those of you listening, you'll see here, just listening to the audio, you'll find out here shortly. But, we have good conversations. He's one of the goats, man. He's won a lot, a whole lot. He finished on the podium this last weekend in Vegas. We're going to have some good conversations of revolving that scenario. He has a Vegas title under his belt. That circumstance is probably going to come up on the podcast today as well, along with the fact that he was shooting incredibly well, didn't miss an X the whole shoot off, made the podium, which nobody will be disappointed. They made the podium in Vegas. But the Paul Harvey rest of the story with this young man is, and look, he's great about it. So I'm going to put a bunch of caveats on it today. So some of you people at home don't get triggered and don't get all twisted, but this kid is absolutely, he's got a great sense of humor. He deals with this stuff great. So we're going to have a cool conversation today. Probably going to get into some things that some of you are not expecting as far as some honesty, because he's very, very honest. But it's Mr. Christopher Perkins. What's going on up north there, buddy?
Not much. Getting rid of the snow and got some warmer weather coming in, so it'd be nice to get outside and I guess now just shoot some foam and some dots and yeah,
There
what
you
have you.
go. So a lot of people don't know, but you are a car freak, or let me think here. Is it a car freak or a clean freak? Both maybe, but I did see something on, am I wrong? I did see something on your socials that you took a picture of a highly polished vehicle on the side there with some reflective situation. So what's going on with the vehicle situation at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean it was nice enough on the weekend, at least on Saturday anyways, that I was able to take the car out of the garage and kind of let it warm up a little bit after it's been put away since well, I guess it'd be before October. So
Right?
yeah, cover off, take it out, stretched its legs up to the one corner and back, and that was it. But yeah, I mean it's clean during COVID. I couldn't really do much else getting back from the tournaments, so I spent a lot of time on I guess behind the polishing machine and yeah, got it all shined up. But yeah, kind of during COVID, I guess that's really kind of what I did to pass the time because I wasn't allowed to cross the border. So yeah,
Right.
there is that.
And we all survived. But anyway, so first of all,
We did.
let folks know what the vehicle is.
So it's my 2017 Dodge Challenger Hellcat. So
Yeah,
and it is black, so which is the best color for a vehicle when they're clean. They
right.
are tough to keep clean. They scratch just looking at them, but when they are clean, they look good.
Yeah, and you're pretty militant when it comes to the cleanliness of your vehicles. So you put in some effort there to keep things tidy.
There's a lot of hours there. Yeah, I don't exactly know how many hours, but there's a lot.
There's a bunch. All right, so let's get into this. First of all, congratulations on making another Vegas podium. I mean, like I said in the intro, you have absolutely, established yourself as one of the best shooters in the game. But before we get to that, What I want to talk with you about before we get into the whole new Vegas and the venue and the shoot off and the changes is you have been shooting, you shot incredibly well in Vegas. And so have you made any change, and look, folks, one of those, here comes your first caveat. Everybody has peaks and valleys in their career. Nobody stays, you know, at the very, very tippy. Everybody has peaks and valleys. And so the last couple of years, it's not that you've been shooting bad. You have just, you've still gotten into shoot off situations. You've still shot good scores. You just haven't quite, been able to get over that last little hump. Um, what changes, if anything, have you made to the form, to the draw length, to any of your equipment, your mentality, or your body that kind of got you, I want to say back, because you were never gone, but you shot old school Chris last weekend. So talk to us about anything that you might have adjusted that kind of got you back to where you needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of years, yeah, like you said, you kind of touched on it a little bit. That yeah, I mean, it's kind of been up and down a little bit. I put myself in a situation where I'd get there, but then just wouldn't capitalize on it. But I mean, I didn't really change a whole heck of a lot. Obviously, the new Matthews title coming out, completely different platform than the TRX lineup. So I mean, what had worked in the past, and especially on the TRX, I knew those bows kind of inside and out. I mean, I had that platform from, I guess, 2018 to just last year. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time behind those bows, really, knew them inside and out. And then, obviously switch into a completely new platform, and not just on one aspect, on literally everything is completely new.
Right.
I had really forced myself to, what had worked in the past, wanting it to work on the new platforms, and it was kind of being set in my ways that I didn't really want to change, and kind of over time, giving it some time, that everything would kind of fall into place, and unfortunately it just didn't. So really struggled with trying to find a setup that worked, that I was comfortable with in the past, that I had won in the past.
Right.
And so this year was just kind of a a new mentality coming into it. Towards the end of last year, really starting to figure out the titles, what they like and what they don't like. Carried it into this year and just kind of said, what, this is, the way it's going to be. We're going to try some new things instead of being stuck on one and trying to make it work.
Right.
We're going to throw, the whole kitchen sink at it and, see what we can get to work. And, just, fortunately for me, after the Rumble, there were some things there that just didn't work. And before Lancaster was like, all right, let's get something rolling here. And, went to Lancaster, shot really well there. And yeah, I knew I had a great setup going into Vegas. Didn't really spend a lot of time behind it, prior to Vegas, just because I knew it was good. Shot a couple games here and there just to kind of confirm that everything was still, ready to rock and roll, and showed up in Vegas and shot, what I would consider exceptionally well, or
For sure.
maybe my old self again,
Right. Yeah. And so let's talk about some of those changes that you might have thrown at it. So here we go again. So historically, Chris does tend to get a little bit of a lean on at full draw. Historically, when he was shooting his best, he had, he would have his string not on the tip of his nose, but he would have his string slightly past his nose. Here comes another caveat, folks. Larry Bird's jump shot, Reggie Miller's jump shot. You don't critique greatness, you observe it. And as long as the person's doing it the same every time and it's theirs, it's all good. It goes in the hole. If you're Larry Bird or Reggie, if you're leaning back with your form and your nose and your strings just slightly past your nose and you're Chris Perkins, obviously it works. So these are not critiques, they're observations, having watched Chris for a long time. We're just going to get into this. I might stop doing those caveats at some point in this podcast, Chris, but probably not. And so I did notice that, the lean is I don't know if it's a little bit more than it was the last couple years, but it's definitely more old school Chris. And I did notice that the string is a little bit on the side of the nose now. Is that one of the things like it used to be? Is that one of the things that you worked on?
Uh, yes and no. Last year, there again, kind of beginning of the year, there again, new setup, new platform. I had shortened up some draw length a little bit, and I think just before indoor nationals last year, I lengthened it back out. And lo and behold, shot good there. I think
Right.
fourth or something, maybe fifth. I don't know. Top 10, we'll say that. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really work much on lengthening my draw length out. I'm still at 29 and 3/16. I think. Apparently, I have a mega long D loop, according to probably 95% of people. Which, I mean, historically, it's always been relatively long compared to others. But just for me, when it comes to where the string is and where my release hand is, just a longer D loop, I've always felt to be a little bit more comfortable for me. And I run, a fairly good amount of face pressure too. So I think that kind of alleviates, probably left and right misses, potentially just running a little bit longer. But I mean, I didn't really work on leaning back further. Yes, I do lean back, absolutely.
Right.
And it's certainly not textbook form, according to the archery gods. But yeah, I mean, it works for me, and it's something that I can repeat over and over again. So,
Right.
and I think that's the biggest thing with archery is if you find something that's comfortable for you and you can repeat it. I mean, that's kind of the game, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely. Now, you said something there that I think a lot of people at home are going to be like, he said he has a lot of face pressure. I thought we weren't supposed to have any face pressure. You,
Yeah.
you are not supposed to have any face pressure at home. Us mere mortals, us regular folk, us humans, we should try to do our best to minimize face pressure. What Chris is doing, however, one, obviously you've tuned to whatever that face pressure is, so it's very consistent for you, and you're a shooting machine.
Yeah.
We are not us people listening. Everyone listening to this, okay, maybe not everyone. There's probably some really good people that listen to this, but 99.9 of us, we're not good enough and we're not consistent enough to do some of the things that the top pros do because they're doing it so consistently and so repetitively. It's just part of their system. Chris's face pressure is one of them. Kendall Woody, his cheek used to completely consume his string at full draw. He did pretty good too. And so what you see some of these pros doing is their thing, and it's not necessarily for everyone. And so and so when when you transition from the TRX, which you shot incredibly well, to this title, you said there were some things that the title likes and doesn't like. Competitive advantage notwithstanding, what are some of those things in both directions that you have found the title does like and maybe doesn't like?
Yeah. I mean, the title definitely doesn't like a stiff arrow, in my opinion.
Doesn't.
In the past, yeah, definitely does not. The TRX, I mean, realistically, you could throw the book at it and it would shoot it well. For me, I think out of the TRX stuff, I always shot something a little on the stiff side, and it worked well for me in the past. I think on the X10 side of things, I think I shot a 380 that was relatively short, almost to the rest. I'd have to go back on my OPA setups the years 18, 19, in which I had won. Mind you, now those were two different setups that I had won with. One was with X Impacts, Black Eagles, and then 19 was with X10s. And like I said, I'm pretty sure they were 380s. So, I mean, at my draw length, 62 pounds, a 380 should be, relatively stiff. And I never, I don't really run a lot of point weight in my X10 stuff. I run 100 grains and I have for a number of years. And then, transitioning over to the titles, there again, like I had said earlier, I kind of wanted to throw those setups that I knew worked exceptionally well and I wanted them to work really bad out of the titles just because I've had, past success. But just wasn't the case. So everything I've thrown at them this year is, generally on the weak side, or I try and keep it on the weak side. And yeah, I mean, they've performed really well. They have, what I would consider a lot of forgiveness, and it fits my shooting style.
Right. And so in your opinion, the title doesn't like a stiff arrow. Anything else that you can identify that the title doesn't like for you?
Uh, Bear shaft tuning. There again, it was kind of real. I'm not much of a tuner to begin with. I kind of used to just throw it at paper. Yeah, okay, that's kind of good enough, and go out and shoot it. Spend some time behind it and kind of learn the system. And for me, I have found that the title likes a little bit of direction. And I shoot a launcher myself, so I don't shoot a drop away. So I kind of feel like maybe a little bit of direction in that system. Definitely, there again, shoots my shooting style the best, and how I shoot. For someone, for someone else, it may prefer a stiff arrow, but with my lean and my face pressure and all that jazz, a weak arrow and an arrow coming out with a little bit of direction seems to work exceptionally well.
Nice, nice. And so what are some of the other things that you think the title, other than the arrow stiffness thing and the tune, does like for you? Holding wise, cam timing, etc.
I've played a little bit with the cam timing, bottom advanced or top advanced. Personally, for me, I've always liked even timing, and I think that bow likes, them to be timed, within, I guess you could say a playing card is what I try and get the timing stops to be within. But there again, like I said, I don't really do much as far as tinkering with that kind of stuff. Kind of once I get the setup and the arrow how I want it and the bow how I want it, then I'll, kind of transition over to, stabilizers and trying to get the hold where I need it. So.
Now, how much difference are you seeing right now between your stabilizer setups on the TRX versus the title?
I'm pretty close to the same, to be honest. Depending on the day, I'll run either 20 ounces out front of the front stab or 21 ounces out front. I don't need to throw a crazy amount of weight at it if I feel like I'm moving a little bit more. But back bar, I don't even know, 24 ounces, 23 ounces.
Dude says I don't run a throw a lot of weight out front. 2021 out front, no big deal. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, but if I'm changing, I'm only throwing 1 ounce at it, right? I'm not throwing 10 ounces at it. But I mean, I guess, yeah, that is quite a bit of weight out front. But yeah, I think on my TRXs, I had to been right around there, and I wasn't far off, I don't think.
Right. So one of the things that I noticed last year when I was talking to you, I don't remember the event. Anyway, you were running a shorter aluminum arrow with, I think, 200 grains up front last year. And then this year I noticed at full draw, your arrow was longish again. And so he's smirking already for those of you listening and not watching. So was that something the title liked? Was that something that you noticed in overall forgiveness? What was it that made you go from the shorter arrow back to a longer arrow, and has the point weight been modified?
Yeah, so last year for Iowa Pro-Am, I ran a 29-inch 27-12 with 200 in the front. Shot well there, I think.
Right.
But and then, I want to say I ran that throughout the entire season. I didn't change it. And then I had some old arrows from years ago. Kind of funny, actually, now that I think of it. I didn't think of it until just now. I grabbed a set of arrows that I was last on the Vegas podium with, and I duplicated it. And so that was a 31-inch arrow with a 4-inch vane and 250 in the front. And that was the last time I stood on a Vegas podium, was when I shot those, which was third as well. And replicated that setup, built it, shot it out of this bow, and went, well, maybe I shouldn't have shot a shorter arrow for the last 2 years. But
Gotcha.
yeah, no, it shot extremely well. I mean, it was kind of right out of the gate. Not a lot of tuning involved. That it showed, some big potential, and so kind of run with it before Lancaster. And like I'd said, made the odd change here and there as far as tune and kind of what I was seeing downrange and impacts and what the holes looked like, whether they were, oblonged or, up and down or left and right, and just kind of changed a couple things to really change that deviance on impact. And yeah, I mean, the setup works super well, and it's probably one that I'll continue to run throughout the years now.
Well, it kind of sounds like you've had some success with it. So what was it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So just kind of give us what was it that precipitated you going to the shorter, lighter arrow? Was it something some other folks were doing? Did you see a competitor that maybe beat you or I mean, and the reason I ask is this, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So
Right.
you're out there shooting this 31-inch arrow with 250 up front, crushing, and then you show up with a short arrow with 200. So do you remember what it was that made you decide that that's something you wanted to try?
I think um, I really don't know why I did it. I think it's because I shot some Super Drive 27s and I cut them short and
Okay.
threw like 150 in the nose or whatever and shot them. And I was like, okay, wow, they shoot really good. And then would make a mistake and go, oh, wow, they don't shoot good.
Not for
And then and then I don't really know why I decided to grab an aluminum 2712 and cut 2 inches off it and say, well, let's try 200. Because even like back in the day, like even PSC days, 2015, when I shot 87 X's, which at the time was the Vegas record,
right.
was a 31-inch 2712 with 250. And I still have those. And
Right.
so I don't know what crossed my mind or what said, hey, let's try this. And then it doesn't work and say, well, let's continue to shoot it. I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
And so, yeah, and then this year was just kind of like, all right, well, you need to make a change. Let's go back to the drawing board. And like I said, I had some arrows that I had shot. Well, I don't even know when that was, 2020, 2021, maybe. I'm
Something like
not
that.
sure. But
Yeah.
anyways, and was like, oh, let's try them, and shot a couple ends out of them and went, okay, well, definitely see some potential here. And then, like I said, shot them throughout maybe the rest of the week just before Lancaster, and then built some fresh ones, and that's what I ran in Vegas as well.
There you go. Now, did you change launcher blades at all, or what launcher blade are you running with both of those rigs?
I still run a standard width 10,000s.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And any change to the angle at all, or just the same?
No, anywhere's between 30 to 35
Okay. Yeah.
in and around that range.
What mod are you running on that title?
I run the 80%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Just for,
65 pounds, 80s, 29s,
just for indoors, or does that apply for outdoors as well?
everything.
Okay.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. And
Nice.
backed out. I think my indoor bow is like 60 and a half pounds or 61 pounds, somewhere in there.
Okay. Nice. All right.
Holding weight, I have no idea. Don't ask me.
Right. 62 pounds, 80%. You folks do the math.
Yeah.
And so, well, and
Yeah.
look, for a lot of folks wondering, when you're running 20 ounces out front and you kind of have the lean that Chris has, if you run 4 ounces out front and you stand up perfectly straight, those mods might not be best for you. So what Chris has talked, everything that Chris has done is dialed for Chris. So it's not apples to apples. So if you get a title and you throw your stabilizer rig on there and you run a 80% mod at 62 pounds, you just need to be prepared that Chris's stabilization affects that. Chris's everything works together on that system for Chris. And when you're running that much weight up front with Chris's posture and his form, the let off is relative. It's not the same for everybody. So just throwing that out there. So, all right. So now let's talk about Vegas. And before we get into the new, right. before we get
Yeah.
into
Hmm.
the new venue, and I did get a text from Chris the other day rolling down the road in his probably pristinely clean truck. And he was listening to the podcast that I made with my thoughts on Vegas, and Chris offered some of his, which is, of course, is one of the reasons precipitating this. But here it comes. Before we get into that, Chris has a Vegas title under his belt. That title, of course, it came at the, and if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken, you were the lucky dog for that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
his first title, Chris was the lucky dog. Um, Unfortunately, for circumstances outside of Chris's control, he didn't get his flowers for that title because he wasn't awarded that title for several months after the event for reasons
Yep.
anyone who's been following Vegas is aware of. So he had um, delayed application of that title, and so he didn't get his flowers in the moment for that. It is what it is. It happened. Now we move to 2025, and Chris was railing. If I'm not mistaken, Chris, you were the only one that didn't actually miss a Super X at all in the shoot off, correct? So,
Correct. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what the end was or whatever, but had this shoot off not went to the inside, if this had went, 10 ends, everything being equal, or if it had just not went to the inside out, which we're going to discuss that as well. Um, you know, if things would have remained the same, Chris would have, just based on straight XS scoring, Chris would have probably been the 2025 Vegas champ and got his flowers. And so Chris has, how many Vegas podiums do you have?
Uh, three. Yeah, if you want to count the win as one.
Well,
Technically didn't stand on it, but yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that one, and then I believe 2/3.
Okay. So
Yeah.
2/3 that one. So Chris is Chris is always a factor there. But the thing that I find interesting, and I kind of want your opinion on this, and it's not a curse, it's not, I mean, bad luck. I mean, I don't know how you want to, I don't look, Chris, I don't know how you want to frame this, but why is it? Why is it that a shooter of your caliber seems to have some circumstances that get shifted a little bit when it comes to your Vegas experience?
I mean, like, I really don't know. Luck of the draw, I guess. I have no idea. But yeah, I mean, like you had said, I mean, if the circumstances had stayed the same, obviously the outcome had stayed the same as far as who missed when and so on and so forth without going inside out, then yeah, I mean that it would have been a different outcome. But I mean that's kind of trying to look into the future, into a crystal ball, and saying, okay, yeah, this is what's going to happen. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just seems to kind of in the groove, and then kind of get tossed a little curveball, I guess.
Right. All right. And look, folks, like I said in my own podcast, we can't have shoot offs going 69 arrows like the Rushmore Rumble. We can't have, just as a sport. Yeah, it'd be great. It's cool to watch Chris and Bodie and Matthias stand there and pound X's, and Nico, don't want to salt Mr. Gerard's game. He shot spectacular. As much as some of us would like to think it's cool to sit there and watch these guys shoot X's for 2 hours, as a sport, that's not necessarily so. I like the inside out, eventually going to the inside out in Vegas. um I wasn't necessarily the hugest fan of how it was implemented. It was obviously in the rules. Like I said in my podcast, I turned to the pros behind me and I'm like, what? And they're like, it's in the rules, he can do that, it's in the rules. I'm like, oh well, I'll just shut up then. But um You've been shooting all of these events. You've probably heard Bruce joke about the inside out in Vegas at some other events, et cetera, et cetera. When Bruce gave the two end warning for inside outs after I think 13 or 14 ends of regular scoring X's, which is ridiculous to begin with.
I
Um,
think I think 13. Yeah.
okay. Um, what started going through your head immediately when Bruce literally vocalized that the inside out X thing is going to happen?
I mean, he had, obviously he had teased us before. And I said to him, I said, well, I said, if you're going to just tease us, I said, why don't you just do it now and get it over with?
Right.
If you're wanting to shorten this up, just get it done and over with. So, I mean, I wasn't against it right off the hop, and I'm not against it now. I think there's different ways that it can be handled, and we'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really change my thought process much. Yeah, I mean, I went in there with 27s. I've shot inside outs with 27s before. Yes, it is doable. There is not a lot of room to do it, but it is doable. So I didn't really change my mind or my mentality after he had kind of gave us a two end warning and said, "Hey, this is actually going to happen." I was kind of shocked, but it definitely changed the game. And people were definitely a lot more engaged. You could tell just by the crowd's reaction. When we did stuff inside outs, but yeah, I mean, like you had touched on, the whole, running 15 ends or 18 ends or however many ends it could have, possibly gone to. It definitely standing up on the stage, going, I don't even know how many ends we went before Mikey actually dropped out, but I think we probably shot maybe three ends, all of us clean, all five of us clean.
Right.
And you could kind of tell the reaction from the crowd that it was kind of like, oh, really, again, essentially.
Right.
So we definitely were losing some engagement there with the crowd, which I don't know. To me, it's kind of cool to stand up in front of 5,000 people and stuff X's for 10 ends or however many ends you want to go. But
Right.
as a spectator watching the sport too, over the years, it is like watching paint dry. So without having that engagement, yeah, well, we definitely lost some people there. But going to inside outs definitely changed the game.
And and I asked Bodie this question as well. And folks, I just got to tell you, look, I'm blessed to have conversations. The amount of respect from Chris to Bodie to Matthias to like the amount of respect between these guys is awesome to see. Obviously we don't see, Bodie and Chris hunting together in Montana, or we don't see, so it's not like they are Jimmy and Stefan, who are fast friends but the amount of respect between these top guys is, I love to see it. Um, in our sport, we can have rivalries, we can have competitions without, any of some of the other stuff that some sports have. So I love to see that. But I'll ask you the same question. When And I know that as soon as he threatened the inside out, Mikey dropped out. I can't say whether Mikey cared or whether that got into his head. Next time I see him, I'll ask him just out of curiosity. I would doubt it. He's Mikey. I wouldn't.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. But if you're just watching and he says we're going to inside out in two ends and Mikey drops out, there is some conversation there. But when he said,
Yeah.
okay, we're going two ends of scoring, and then when you start the inside out, is there any change in your mentality? Is there any change in your aiming requirements? Is there any changes in your shot process, or you speed it up or slow it down? What for you is your mental process when you know that, well, here I am in the lucky dog, but not the lucky dog again, shooting inside outs?
Yeah, for me, I don't think really think I changed much, as like I said, as far as the mentality side of things, maybe aimed a little harder at it. When we did go the first end of inside out scorings, you know, it gave me an opportunity to win outright right there if I had stuffed my third one. But knowing that in the back of my head, yeah, I knew the position I was in. I just, had to make a good shot and hopefully it landed inside out. Inside outs with a 27, I touched on it before. It's hard to do, but it's not impossible. I think there's some luck involved with it. I mean, you could be the best shooter in the world and shoot 30 arrows with a 27, and you may not hit an inside out.
Right.
It, it, it,
Right.
it it's hard to say. I mean, you can't say. I mean, maybe some can. I don't know. Stand on the line and say I'm going to stuff this inside out with a 27. I don't know. When I won Lucky Dog, I shot 3 or 4 inside outs with a 27. So, like I
Yeah.
said, it is doable. There is definitely some luck involved with it, but no, I didn't. I didn't change my thought process at all. I didn't change my shot timing at all. When we did go the inside outs, yeah, sure, it's in the back of your mind that kind of hope it goes, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean,
Right.
I personally wouldn't change anything differently than I did.
Right. So, and you and I have kind of already discussed this a little bit. Obviously, the inside outs in Vegas is going to become a thing. It needs to become a thing at some point. And so I said in my podcast, whether it's 10, 12 rounds, I just made that number up, folks. That's hyperbole. And I did make a point. If this shoot off had only went 10 ends, the inside outs would have never taken place. So don't think that the inside outs are going to happen every single time. Sergio Pagni lucky dog, where he won before people even showed up to watch. Like literally, people were walking in and Sergio Pagni's riding the horse and carriage out of the thing, and they're like, "What happened? Oh, it's over. You
First
missed."
end of X's.
Literally, first end of X's. Pow! Sergio
Yep.
Pagni wins. And so,
Yep.
I said, just as a number, folks, not. I said, 10 ends or 12 ends. X counts the scoring, and then after that, it's a known entity. It goes to inside outs. What's your thought process on a good format for that? I'm sure Bruce will listen to this. Bruce will probably be talking to lots of people over the next however long it takes. But how would you, as someone who will probably be there again next year, how would you like to see that be set in stone?
I would say a game of X's is 10, so 10
10.
ends,
Okay.
in my opinion. I mean, if you're if you're shooting an entire game in front of however many people in the crowd of
Sure.
just X's as tens, and you get past end number 10 of shooting 30 X's, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think after an entire game of X's tens, it should go inside out X's.
I think that's solid. I think that's a good time frame because here's one of the other things. Chris and these guys shooting 30 X's in a row in the shoot off takes way less time than shooting a round during the competition. It's way faster. So don't take the amount of time it takes Chris to shoot his 30 arrows on day 1, 2, or 3 and think that's the same amount of time that it takes him to shoot 30 arrows in the shoot off. There's only one line. It's way quicker. So that moves pretty quickly. And so I agree with you. I think 10 ends and then going to inside outs is a good number. Uh Look, as much as we would want to say, oh, Bodie and Matthias and Chris and Nico and Mike, they'll shoot 30 X's in a row on the shoot off every single time. No, they won't. No, they won't.
No,
No,
no.
nope. Sorry. No, they won't.
I can guarantee you he won't.
You're right. Right. Yeah. I'm not up
because the
there.
history yeah, because the history of Vegas would have been the same, over the years. I mean, it's been, I don't know, well, the year 2018 when it technically won. I mean, again, first end of X's. Everybody dropped out except Bobby and I.
Right.
Out
Right.
of 18, I
Exactly.
think. So like, yeah, it's such a toss up because people are going to be like, well, this is just the new norm now. Well, next year it might go 5 ends. Like, who knows? But I think if you had set in stone an entire game of X's scored as tens, and then after that, just as a precaution to have in your back pocket, essentially, then yeah, I mean, then it goes inside out X scoring. Do I think the inside out X scoring should be still valued the same? No. I personally think that if you shoot an inside out X, you get a bonus point of an 11. And then if you still hit an X, but it's not inside out, it should be scored as a 10. So I feel the archer should still be rewarded for hitting X's, not just because of my situation. I'm not, addressing that for that, but I think if you stuff an inside out X, you should have some sort of a reward. And then I think, whatever happens after that,
Yeah,
score to the target the same. I don't know.
I could not agree with Chris anymore. And basically, what Chris is talking about is the bigger you miss, there should be a penalty. So it's my
Yeah.
opinion. It's my opinion. If you stuff an inside out X, that's 10. If you hit an X, that's 9. If you miss an X, that's 8.
Yeah.
That I agree with that wholeheartedly, because because look, folks, here's the thing. When it goes to the X is the 10, all the yellow is the 9.
Yeah.
So Chris could hit the X line and someone else could touch red and they're both still shooting.
Value is the same. Yeah.
Think about that. Let that sink in for a minute. Those arrows are 2 inches apart, literally 2 inches apart, and they're the same value. So I agree with Chris 100%. I just think that every line needs to decrease. Once we go to inside out, every ring is worth 1 point less. If inside out is 10, an X is a 9, 10, etc.
Yeah.
And
changing the game without completely changing the target.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And what that would do is that would not only, it would literally reward and prevent giant misses from advancing if someone like Chris hit, one inside out and 2 X's, and someone else hit 1 inside out, 1 X, and 110. It would literally be over. And so I agree with that. And so, I think 10 ends and then inside out is a solid number. Obviously Bruce has a lot of decisions that I don't envy here over the next near distant future. So let's talk about the next one. Small arrows. We saw Matthias go to the X10s. Props for him. Like I said in the other podcast, I respect that. That is the I say Levi Morgan because he's the one that's vocalized it more, but it's the same mentality across all champions. I'm here to win. And so, whatever Matthias's next tournament is, he's probably going to be in a position to win that too. So it's not like this was a once in a lifetime opportunity and Matthias threw it away. Not even close. He's the defending champion. He's in almost every shoot off. Him not winning Vegas because he went to X10s is literally a blip on Matthias's radar. Same would go for Chris. Same would go for everybody else. So obviously, we chatted about going to smaller arrows at the NFAA Indoor Nationals where you're shooting a big X, basically the Vegas 10. Going to inside out super X's and Matthias didn't change arrow rests. So his tune for the X10s was definitely not definitely not what it could have been because he was tuned for his other arrows. So my question to you is twofold. One, do you care if anyone switches to different arrows? And number two, in what scenario would that be something you would look at?
I don't really care. If you want to shoot X10s throughout the entire shoot off, have at her. You're probably not going to make it too far, if I'm being completely honest, because it is tough to shoot a 30X game with X10s, but
right.
Again, it is doable. For me, I don't know. Maybe I'll have that in my back pocket going forward, but like I had touched on it earlier, that when you change something like that, it is a drastic change.
Right.
You have now changed. Even if you change your sight, you change your rest, you switch everything over to you have the best tune possible with that arrow. But what you've done is you've completely change the dynamic feel of the bow that you've felt all weekend. You know, your feedback is different. The reaction of the bow is different. And also, people don't take this into, account a lot of times. An indoor arrow is substantially heavier than an outdoor arrow.
Right.
So you have now cut sometimes ounces from the system. And people don't really, or at least not a lot of people think about that. For me, my outdoor arrow is 375 grains. My indoor arrow is almost 700 grains.
Right.
So there is a weight difference there. And, somebody at my level, I can feel that on how the bow holds.
Ah.
So, yeah, I mean, if I don't have, maybe an ounce or 1/3 or a half ounce in my quiver to stick somewhere, then, that bow might move a little faster. But for me, until I get to a position like that again, I might keep it in my back pocket. I'm certainly not making the switch until that point.
Right. Would you, and I've seen a lot of people say, oh, we just need to restrict it to 23s to, help level. And I'm like, dude, two of the top 5 were already shooting 23s. So that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean,
would you consider going to 23s for the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I the first two 900s I ever shot in Vegas. The first year I went, and the second year I went, I shot 23s.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, it's middle is middle for one.
Right.
Two, if I'm building a setup with the mentality of I just want to catch a line because I'm running a bigger arrow, I've probably got bigger problems than that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if they wanted to restrict it to 23s, you can only shoot 23s. That's fine. I mean, World Archery is already 23s, so we're not changing. We're really not changing the game. Your top guys are still going to be your top guys, and like you said, 3 of the last 5 standing were running 23s.
Right.
3 of the last 5. 2 of the last 5. Sorry.
2, Nico and Mikey.
Yeah, Mikey and Nico. Yeah. So.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna change the game like people think it would by restricting us to a 23.
No, I don't think it would at all. I mean, Stefan, when he shot those, I think he shot 88, 23.
88 with 23s.
Yeah. So I just don't think folks understand that the smaller arrow. Oh yeah. Okay. If you restrict them to their outdoor FITA arrows, yeah, that'll change things.
Different game.
Yeah. Right. But that's not going to happen. Number one, I don't want Chris Perkins shooting X10s into that bale at 20 yards anyway, because he's going to get quarter way through the round and he's going to be up to the veins. No offense, just is what it is. Yeah. And so for you, and I think we agree, and look, folks, here's something to keep in mind. If you think it's bad for the sport that they can change arrows in the middle, then obviously you don't watch sports. Because when a NASCAR driver says his car's not handling, does his pit crew tell him tough shit, drive it, shut your mouth? No, they bring it into the pit.
Right.
They make adjustments. They change tires. They change air pressure. When a NFL player complains about their footing out on the grass, they change the length of their cleats. When a pro tennis player is having some issue, they'll go over and grab a racket out of their bag that has different tension on the strings. So for archers to think that we are so special, that our game is so pure that you guys shouldn't be able to change your bullets before or whatever a shoot off, that's just counterproductive in my opinion. And that's not what real sports do. So we want to be a real sport.
Yeah.
But then we also want to tell Chris Perkins or whomever, oh, no, this is what you got to ride the horse that brought you. I just don't buy that.
Yeah.
Now, and so what I wanted to talk to you about was, and this is not necessarily a situation where, you shoot a 120 in indoor nationals and then you dial in your X10s or your small arrows before the shoot off. In this situation, guys, Matthias was the only one. He went from shooting normal arrows to X10s from one end to the next. And so talk a little bit about the confidence of the tune and go, Jesse Broadwater shot 120 X's in indoor nationals with X10s and then went into the shoot off and ended up missing a whole X. But the point is, you're simply not going to knock an X10 on your bow that is dialed for 27s and have even close to the same tune. So talk a little bit about the accuracy of the tune that's required from transitioning to, and we'll just use X10s as the unit of measure, transitioning to an X10 at indoor nationals with the time you get to change rests or do whatever else you want to do, to shooting inside out super X's, which is a whole nother world.
Yeah, I mean, indoor national is a different game, and we would get some time. Probably most of us actually come with, a complete setup to shoot a small arrow for internationals. And myself, I change my my rest, and then obviously move my sight to whatever. The sight's kind of irrelevant, but the rest is obviously what gives me my tune for that setup. But like you had said, Matthias, he literally shot an X10 off a 27 rest setup. Well,
right.
That probably doesn't look so hot as far as knock height. Yeah, so I mean that mentality too, and having confidence in that. I mean, he obviously knows that it's not 100% perfect. Obviously he was wanting to get by with it, and giving him another arrow. If he had shot a fourth arrow, I'm sure he would have shot it inside out because his last one was close. But kudos to him for making that switch, and like you had said, kind of going all in with it. But yeah, I mean, it's a different thought on that. Like I had said earlier, shooting something you have total confidence in, and then completely changing it and hoping that it works. Yeah, it's more mentally taxing than what I think some people would think. And being in his situation, he knows out of the gate that, I mean, he's got to make it happen. He's got 3 arrows to do it in. And I mean, Nico had already stuffed one, Bodie had already stuffed one, and then I had stuffed one. That also plays a big factor too, because now he doesn't have room for error there. He's got to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's not like, dude, he came out cold turkey with X10s and didn't even miss a 10. I mean, a big 10. He obviously missed.
Yeah, no, I mean, he hit his first arrow in X, and then I think his second one might have just missed the X, but his third one
was close.
His third one was close.
Right. And
yeah, it was definitely close.
What was because Bodie, and this is something that Bodie brought up, I hadn't even thought of. Most of the time when you go to inside out X's, it's one arrow. It's like, but this continued for the end to end, which I think is fantastic. So Bodie gave Nico a fist bump when he piped his first arrow out the gate. Nico just pipes an inside out, and Bodie's like, oh yeah, shit. Well, I guess he won, and gives him the fist bump and stuff. And then Bodie doesn't shoot it. What was your thought process when you saw Nico pipe his first inside out? Like, first arrow of the inside out scoring, he shoots an inside out. It's like,
I personally didn't think of it like that. When they had said inside out scoring, I just assumed that it was all 3. You shot 2 inside outs and somebody only shot 1. Well, then obviously you won. So I didn't think of it like that. And I don't ever recall Bruce wording it like that, but I guess it kind of in the moment you're thinking, okay, well, inside out, that it is 1 arrow, but yeah, I didn't give it much thought in that aspect. I just assumed, okay, well, we're going inside out, so I got 3 arrows to do something here. So
gotcha. Okay, so you got the memo. A bunch of us were like, oh, it is 3. So literally, us were on that same tip.
Yeah, like I had said, when he had said it inside out scoring, I just assumed he meant all 3. I mean, if he had meant 1,
yeah,
that one would have been awesome for Nico, but that would have sucked because I didn't go into the end thinking it like that. So
right. So let me run this scenario to you. 2026, Vegas. You know, as a hard rule, hard stop, shoot a 900 to get into the shoot off. 10 ends, 1 practice end, 1 normal end, 10 ends of X is the 10 scoring, and on the 11th end, you go to inside out.
Yeah.
Is Chris Perkins, the Perkinator, is he shooting big arrows for the 900 and then transitioning to a 23 for the shoot off for the entirety of the shoot off? Or are you shooting 23s for the whole event? What's your strategy for 2026 when I'm assuming we'll know 10 ends of X in 10 X's of X scoring, then the inside outs. Are you shooting one size arrow for the qualifications, the 900, then going down to a 23, or what's your strategy there?
Yeah, I kind of gave it a little bit of thought because I figure, I mean, it's going to stick now. I mean, it's not going to go away.
No.
My thought process on that is probably stick to 27s for the 900, shoot that, and then try and replicate a good 23 setup and just shoot that for the entirety of the shoot off.
Okay.
I don't think that I would run the 10 ends with 27s and then make that switch like I had kind of touched on. That I think it would be too drastic of a change for me anyways to be comfortable with it mentality wise. Right. So I think that if this was going to be a hard rule, it's not going away. This is how it's going to be from now on moving forward. I would probably shoot 27s for qualifier and switch to 23s for the entirety of the shoot off.
I think that will be the norm. I won't be there, folks. I don't shoot that good, but that's what I would do. That to me would be hands down the best strategy. I mean, a guy at Chris's level could shoot a 27 for qualifications and then build a real good X10 tune. The problem is 10 ends of X is the 10 scoring with X10s would be rough. That would be very
tough.
Yeah,
That's tough.
That would put you way behind the 8 ball. I mean, way behind the 8 ball. So I think what Chris just said, I think that's probably going to become the given strategy. Not to be an industry schlep here, but for those of you that say, nope, just make them all shoot 23s. I don't think the arrow companies are going to want that because the 27 diameter arrows have been around for a lot of years. There's point companies, there's arrow companies, there's lots of things, whether it be Easton, Victory, Gold Tip, Black Eagle, like every one of these companies have 27s, and don't tell me they can shoot 27 carbons in 3D and that's good enough. Indoor archery is the largest, hands down. Indoor archery rules the world, period. You can shoot it in a shop. You can do more people tune in for indoor archery than anything because it's the highest participation. Indoor archery is our bowling. You can do it everywhere and everyone does it. Am I wrong? I mean, that's it. And so, I've seen the data numbers and look, and this is a hard fact. Chris already understands this. So this is not new information for Chris, but, from a data standpoint for viewership, folks in Europe don't really care what's going on in the IBO or ASA. Folks in the ASA don't necessarily care what's going on with FIDA. So there's all this crossover of globally. There's all this crossover of certain segments of the archery crowd tuning in for what they want to watch. All of them watch indoors. Everybody. Yeah. Every segment of our constituency watches indoors. So, I think what Chris just said is hands down going to become the norm when Bruce makes that known. And so one question that I asked Bodie that he hadn't paid attention to, by the way, and I've already known this, going back to the picture of you, Mikey, and Jesse Broadwater on the floor of the arena when we were shooting on dirt and you guys were getting ready to shoot off. And I said, all right, guys, I'm going to take a picture. And you did the flex, but the amount of personality that you, even Matthias, when George was referencing not being able to see your arrow because of Matthias's head, he ducks down and then he shot something and people go, ooh, and he turns around and does the quiet. But the amount of personality from you, Matthias and Bodie, um, I thought was spectacular. So I know you guys, and that's exactly how you guys are. So all I can tell you is on archery's behalf, keep letting that personality out. We need more of it. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it just is what it is. And so,
Right.
um, in that regard, I thought it was spectacular. But one of the questions that I asked Bodie that he didn't, but Paige ended up listening and letting me know, this was the first time that you guys have shot off on a stage or in an auditorium that was acoustically built for the audience to hear everything, but for the people on stage to not be in the same acoustic environment. In
Right.
the arena is the arena. Everybody hears everything,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Well, Paige said being up on stage audibly was quite different. Did you notice anything different as far as being up on the stage from the sound of it?
Uh, yes and no. Like, I mean, I think just because being in the zone and kind of in my own head, that I mean, I already tuned a lot of it out, so that can also play a big factor. But yeah, I mean, like standing when we walked off, you could definitely hear a lot more chatter than actually being up on the stage. Like you couldn't really hear anything other than just the reaction from the crowd as far as somebody stuffed an inside out X and then they go just absolutely berserk, which is what happened. I mean, yeah, we definitely heard that. But as far as being, kind of up there and somebody at full draw or whatever, especially when we went to, single arrow, yeah, you can't hear anything. And I didn't really think much of that, but I had said that to my fiance, and I was just like, it was just kind of weird that, you know, we could hear a little bit of stuff when the crowd kind of erupted, but after that, I mean, it was almost like you could hear a pin drop. There wasn't anything.
Yeah, and folks, that's not because it was super quiet. That's because that auditorium, like look, the Scorpions were scheduled to play in the auditorium after we were done. Now they ended up not showing up. They canceled. But this auditorium is not just it's literally acoustically built so that the audience gets all the sound and the folks on stage, in this case the band, doesn't get much other than the crowd's reactions or cheering and stuff. So I thought that
Yeah.
that was kind of interesting. Obviously, I wouldn't expect that to affect guys at your level at all, but I thought it was interesting because the sound for me, consuming the sound of the shoot off, obviously Bruce was on the mic, but consuming the sound of the shoot off, specifically the arrows hitting the target and the paper, um,
Yeah.
it was a lot more. It was way different than the arena. I'll put it that way. And so,
Yeah.
um, one thing about this particular situation, that arena, was lighting. The lighting seemed
On point.
pristine, right?
Yeah.
And so, talk a little. You've shot off in both. You've shot off in the arena at South Point, which we got spoiled by that arena as far as viewers go, folks. Let me tell you, the elevated seating, being able to watch these guys shoot all 3 days, we got spoiled by the arena. So I'm not trying to hit
Yeah.
on the arena by any stretch of the imagination. So don't take that as this. The arena spoiled us. But talk a little bit about the difference in lighting and throughout a shoot off like this from the arena at South Point to the Planet Hollywood Live Theater.
Yeah. I mean, the lighting was on point, almost like too bright at times. But yeah, I mean, we certainly made do with it. But yeah, South Point there again, like you said, I mean, they had certainly spoiled us, and it was a fantastic 12 years there. But the lighting at Planet Hollywood, just on the targets themselves, even like us walking out, like they were. I didn't look at them because, like, I mean, it's almost blinding at times. But yeah, everything was good, like in that regards as far as lighting. I mean, and I never really had any issues with lighting at South Point when it come to the shoot off itself. I always felt like the lighting there was really good as well. But yeah, the whole theater thing, that whole experience with that, fantastic. I enjoyed shooting there. The practice stuff, I mean, there has been some chatter about that, with the bales and stuff in the locations that they were as far as the warm up goes. I didn't really think it was a big deal because, one, we already had the opportunity to shoot on stage on our target. So, we had the opportunity to shoot an hour or four ends or whatever it was there, to kind of get our zero and kind of get a feel for things on how things are going to work as far as bottom targets, top targets, and transitioning there. So it was awesome to get a chance to experience the lighting first, make any changes if need be, and then go from there. Where South Point, we didn't really have that opportunity. Yeah, we had the opportunity to warm up at 20 yards just off to the right of the finals venue and kind of get warmed up there. So, I mean, it is a little bit different, but quite honestly, I enjoyed the way everything was set up at Planet Hollywood, and hopefully we maybe continue to be there. If not, that's a decision outside of my pay grade.
Yeah. Oh, well, exactly. And folks, if you're wondering what that comment means, don't freak out. Our contract is 3 years with Caesars, the entity, not Paris and Horseshoe and Planet Hollywood. Caesars owns all that shit. So we don't know, or at least we don't know. The two of us don't know. And I would imagine Caesars has not completed their audit for our attendance. But when that's done, oh, I did hear a number. Archers. Oh, Chris, this doesn't apply to you. Maybe at home in practice or sometime throughout your career, but take a guess how many arrows we shot into the walls throughout the Paris and the Horseshoe.
You're wanting me to guess?
Yeah, I guess.
Ah, 10. I have no idea.
12.
I was close. I
Yeah.
was close.
Yeah, yeah. We shot 12 arrows into the walls, folks. Some of them like 15 feet high. I'm
Nice.
trying to, I don't do this often, Chris. You know me pretty well. I'm trying to say this as nicely as possible. We need to do better. Archers, we need to do better. This is a new facility. We're going to get into the new facility and bow condoms and all that kind of crap too, but Caesars is probably not used to holes in their walls from events that they have in these. And so the fact that we have weapons, now granted, none of us really consider a compound bow and arrow with a damn 2712 and a 30-inch stabilizer a true weapon. None of us are going to choose. If you go break into Chris Perkins' house, you may hear a click, but it's not going to be a click from his release. I'm just putting that out there. So
Maybe it might be the first thing I grab. You never know.
right. So we don't consider these weapons by our units of measure, but Caesars does. 12 holes in the wall is not a good look, folks. Please I'm just going to stop talking about that. We need to do better. And so, but we have the opportunity to get promoted, more rooms, bigger rooms. I don't know exactly, but we're not forced to stay in what everyone saw. Now, does that mean we're going to change from the Planet Hollywood Live Theater for the shoot off? I don't know. I thought the live theater was pretty dope. I wish they would have ran the big screen a little differently when it got down to arrow for arrow. I don't personally like the switching from Chris Perkins at full draw to when he shoots, you hear the arrow hit and then the screen switches to the target. I like to see both at the same time, and I want to watch the arrow impact. It's just better consumption for me. I like it better. But so there's no saying that we are stuck in there. It's just going to be a matter of their performance. Now, to Chris's point about the warm up and all that stuff, this was the first time. I mean, did they think about practice for the shoot off participants at the live theater beforehand? I don't know. But Bruce and Brittany have historically proven that they are willing to adapt and they're willing to. So maybe next year there's a tent out there so that they can shoot 20 yards if they see fit, or I don't know what it'll be, but I'm sure that Bruce and Brittany and the NFAA in Vegas don't want Chris Perkins warming up in the alley at 3 yards on bales regularly. That's not Super Bowl caliber, and they will fix it. I have no doubt. And so one other question that I wanted to ask you, and I forgot to ask Bodie because I'm retarded, was the footing. I'm not talking about how flat it was. It was pretty flat. But that is a stage, right? That is a stage. And so now you had Matthias in front of you, who's probably 140 pounds soaking wet. But when you were out there with everybody and you guys had to run multiple lines, was the stage so solid that when someone next to you would walk off or people would be walking around, could you feel it in your feet at all?
No, I mean, that was one thing that we had talked about during the practice session, was like, oh man, I wonder if somebody moves, if you can feel it. And no, I mean, you could jump up and down beside somebody and not feel it.
Okay.
So I mean, super solid, no issues in that regards.
Yeah, I walked up on stage when it was all said and done, and people were doing pictures and all kinds of stuff, and it felt relatively stout for me.
Yeah,
I'm not 140 pounds soaking wet, and so
right.
But I forgot to ask Bodie that same question. But I'm glad to hear, because we've been in situations where you're either on a platform that is not necessarily the most stable, or we've shot in arenas that have post-tensioning floors to where when there's a forklift on the other side of the thing, you can kind of feel it in the floor. So I'm glad to hear that was relatively solid. So
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk about, you've been to a lot of these, as have I, but let's talk about the Chris Perkins, not the shoot off Chris Perkins, just the archer, the consumer, the customer Chris Perkins experience at the 2025 Vegas shoot. Which hotel did you choose to stay in?
I was at the Horseshoe. Yeah, overall experience was really good. Everybody. I think the biggest thing everybody always kind of goes on about is cost. Well, unfortunately, cost is irrelevant nowadays because everything's more expensive.
Right.
So, I mean, it doesn't really matter where we go. Everything, yes, is going to be more expensive. That's just the new norm now. But overall experience, super, super good. I mean, I had no complaints whatsoever with where we stayed. The rooms were fine. I'm not spending the entire day in my room, so I could really care less as long as it's got a comfortable bed and a good pillow I can lay my head down on. But
right. Running water.
yeah, exactly. Other than that, I mean, just an overall really, really good experience. Zero complaints on my end. Yeah, I mean, lots of places you can walk to, endless places to eat. There again, depending on how deep your pockets are, is wherever you want to eat. Never had any issues. I ate on pretty much both sides of the dollar spectrum, to
Right.
Super cheap to not so cheap. But
Right.
there again, I go to Vegas one time a year, and if I want to have $100 steak, I'm going to have $100 steak. So again, irrelevant. I'm not doing it. Well, shouldn't say I'm not doing it every weekend, but I'm certainly not going to treat myself like that every weekend. And yeah, being in Vegas once a year is totally fine with me, and I could really care less where it is. As like I said, as long as you know, everything's planned out super well, and everything seemed to run super smooth. Yeah, it took some adjusting to walk around and find out where people shoot, but other than that, once I walked it once, it was fine.
Right. Absolutely. And Chris pretty much just summed it up. That's exactly what it was. I mean, like I said the other day, did I have sushi in the Paris? Not after looking at the prices, I didn't. So there's a benchmark. There's a benchmark there. Um, South Point's sushi was way more price appropriate for me. So I didn't have sushi, but I had lots of other food, and no, it wasn't the cheapest, but it was there. What really hit me, Chris, was when I went to walk out the front doors of the Paris to go walk along the strip, and the freaking water for the Bellagio is right across the street. I was like, oh
Oh yeah.
shit, yeah, we're here. We're literally
Yeah.
here. Because I came in the self parking, and so I hadn't walked out that way yet. And so
Oh yeah.
when I went to walk out those glass doors, and I'm like, oh, that's the water for the Bellagio. It kind of hit me that wow, we are literally on the strip, which I thought was cool. And like you, I go to Vegas once unless I'm driving through to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, for me, I thought it was super good. And like I said, I mean, anytime we were really at the South Point, a lot of the times we were going to the strip to eat anyway. So we'd have a group of people, and whether we get into one Uber or we get into two Ubers, I mean, we're spending 40 to almost $50 to go on the strip one way,
right.
to go eat. Where, I mean, we ate at somewhat of this, some of the same restaurants we did when we were at the South Point, but we got to save the $100 Uber ride or the $50 Uber ride and
Right.
walked there. So
Absolutely. Well, and I mean,
yeah,
look, this is something that a lot of people have been complaining about. Like, you know, it's just an event. They've ran events. How could it be worse this time? Well, there's new decorators at the casino, at the docks. Little known fact. So, in South Point, they had the big docks and everybody pulled around the back and they just loaded straight into the dock. The Horseshoe doesn't have a dock. They've built that up so much over the years that they have like a 200-yard ramp. So yeah, it's quite different. And so new decorators, new union boss, new employees, new everything. So this was literally like a fresh start for Brittany and Bruce. And so
yeah,
the small things that did happen, yes, there was a 24-hour practice range mishap where they said they would lose access, but they didn't inform everybody that they needed to get their shit out. So it's like, but these are small things in the big picture. And I definitely think that there's growth potential there. So what else did Chris do during Vegas? Did you go see any shows, or I mean, this is a work trip for you, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
We've all seen, and we've all been on the party buses from South Point where we all go down and we either go to Fogo de Chao, or we all go down for big meals. But did you partake as a non-pro guy, non-shoot off Chris, did you partake in any other activities while we were down on the strip during your off time?
no, not really. I mean, I kind of there for one reason, and really one reason only. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, we will go to. I've got a buddy that has stayed with me the last couple of years, and we'll go to a good restaurant or whatever. We'll go to Hell's Kitchen and stuff like that, and just kind of indulge in good food. But as far as shows and stuff, no. I mean, I'm not really that kind of person. But
I,
I have gone to the shows before.
right.
But yeah, I mean, I treat it as a work trip, and I kind of do my thing, and that's it.
Oh yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, the reason I've said this forever, the reason Vegas is as big as it is because Vegas is a destination for not
Yeah,
everybody. Not everybody. Um,
not this guy, but
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
there.
Right. Chris has to come there as a destination for the airport code, but Chris is not coming there for vacation like a lot of folks do. I mean, it's been work for me since 2002. It's less work now, luckily, but for a lot of people, coming to Vegas is not, oh, we're going to see Blue Man Group tonight. We're going to see that. That's a
Yeah,
luxury for some of the thousands of people that come there. But for guys like Chris and other guys at his level, you're not going to see Bodie down on Fremont Street at 2 a.m. That's not
no.
happening. Or
Well, you might. He
Huh?
just hasn't found his way back yet. I said, you might. He hasn't found his way back yet.
Right. And so, that part is just an experience that I think a lot of people don't necessarily key on. So let me ask you this, with some of the changes you've made to, to the title, to the arrow, to, everything you've done that had you shooting at the 2025 Vegas as well as any Chris Perkins we've ever seen, if not better, because in 2025, the old Chris Perkins needed to grow because the game has changed. If I had told Chris Perkins from, 10 years ago, oh yeah, bro, you're going to have to shoot 30, 39
Yeah.
X's in a row to even stay in the shoot off, you'd have laughed in my face.
Yeah.
Because back then, I mean, dude, look, you can attest to this. 10, 15 years ago, even in the picture I took of you, Mikey, and Jesse, back then, everybody knew it. Come into the shoot off,
Yeah.
shoot 12 X's in a row, and you win.
Yeah.
Generally
Pretty
speaking,
much.
yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Generally speaking, you come into
Yeah.
the Vegas shoot off, you shoot 12 X's in a row, you win.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the old Chris Perkins couldn't have hung in today's world, but what I'm saying is it seems to me from what I'm watching that the 2025 Vegas Chris Perkins is better than the other ones because he has to be. The game's not the same. And so,
Yeah.
and dude, how old are you again?
32. Yeah.
Dude,
33 this year.
you are young, bro. And so I can't even ask you old man questions, but you've been around long enough, you're going to get them. Your beard doesn't seem to have any odd color in it yet. And so,
That's why I wear a hat. That's why I wear a hat. I keep it covered. Keep it
right.
covered.
And so talk a little bit about the elite level mentality of what being involved in what we'll call the old game, and seeing this transition to what the new game is. Talk a little bit about that from a mentality as a competitor, like what's needed to win these days.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it. Well, I guess would have been last year when I shot the 690 in Iowa.
Right.
We had talked about the game evolving to a point where an indoor game is you can't miss. Um, you know, Talking back on it, that it was kind of a funny thing to say because I mean, really nobody had done it at that point. And then as the game has evolved, yeah, now we're seeing Vegas shoot-offs go 15 ends before it's won in the last 2 years. So yeah, I mean it's definitely changed, and I think that I've been in it long enough. I've seen the changes happen, and I've tried to stay with the times when it comes to that. So I don't. I mean, I try not to change myself much because I feel that I can compete with that level. Like talking about it back then, I mean, maybe I could have competed with that level as the old me, but it wasn't needed then. I guess I don't know if it's the right way to say that, but
It wasn't required.
now yeah, and now it is. Like now you're gonna go 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 15 ends to determine a Vegas champion, which is wild to think now.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that just the game is evolving, and everybody at that level is pushing people to a level that we've never seen before. And standing on stage with the five shooters, I think I would be wrong to say that we don't feed off one another. I think me being the last shooter in the row of five when we went to the single arrows, everybody shooting a 10 ahead of me. I think I fed off of that, and it never really crossed my mind that, oh wow, I got to hit this. It was just draw the bow back and do my thing, and
Right.
it was kind of cool that we would continue end and end and end, and I don't know, like I said, how many we shot, 2 or 3 ends before Mikey actually missed his, but it's cool because I think everybody's energy up there fed off one another, and it just pushed us to exceed
Right.
another level out there.
Well, and plus there was moments where each of your personalities came out. There there was
Yeah.
moments where, Bodie was cracking a joke and Matthias is ducking down and Matthias is doing this and you're over there, letting your personality out as well. How do those moments of personality, how do those moments help or hurt your flow within the competitive side of the is it nice to kind of get a little break from the just the hardcore pressure of having to perform to be able to make a joke or interact with the audience at all, or does that distract you in any way?
I don't think it hurts us. I think at that point we were all pretty cool.
Right.
Like for me, it was kind of super weird. The mental state that I was in, it was that many ends under that amount of pressure. My nervous system at that point was just shot. I mean,
Right.
so
Right.
I wasn't nervous anymore. Obviously the most nervousness that I think most of us feel is probably that first end of X's, or maybe even the first scoring end in general. But
Right.
um, it was almost like I was shooting at my range at home. So as far as the personality, I mean, that's just me as a person coming out um, and expressing how I kind of feel in that very moment. But
Right.
as far as it hurting my game, I don't think it would have hurt any of our games. Everybody, we were all shooting at a high level at that point. That, I mean, we probably could have won another 20 ends. Who knows? But
Uh,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's just kind of in the moment thing, I guess.
100%. And I thought it was great for the sport. I think that all of that emotion and you guys being able to laugh and joke, and even though Bodie gave Nico a high five or a pound because he pretty much thought he had just won it because he assumed the one arrow thing. I thought all of that was great
Yeah.
to watch. But absolutely amazing. So last question here. Let me ask you this. I know it's always nice to come off of a win when you talk about transitioning to outdoors and confidence and all of that stuff. I think Vegas is probably one of the only events where you can walk away with a ton of increased confidence, even when you don't win. Um, that's not to say if you shot an 899 with 89 X's, you'd be walking away with a ton of confidence. But like your situation, Matthias's situation, obviously Bodie won, Nico. So I think it's applicable for this event. And so considering how you shot for that event and how things ended up, with some of the changes you've made, how's that got your mindset coming into outdoors?
Yeah, it validates the work that I've put in as far as making changes to not only better my scores, but also better me on a mental state as well, continuing throughout the year. Knowing that what I've put into the bow and the effort that I've put in leading up to this point is working essentially. So it's basically telling me that, okay, well, if we continue in this direction and what we're doing, it's working, and we're just going to continue to grind it out for the rest of the season, instead of having to search for something and hopefully find it in the middle of the season, where now I feel like I have found it and we're just going to maintain it for the events ahead.
Absolutely. So I think I know the answer to this. It's going to be a rhetorical question. Somebody, somebody is going to shoot that 90X in Vegas. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's more people closer now than ever. Bodie just dropped one, so that's a new record. You got you and
Mm-hmm.
Stefan, and I mean, you guys that have been in the 87 to 88s for years now. Who's going to shoot that first 90?
I can't speculate on anybody. I have no idea. It could be anybody. There's five shooters that I could probably wrap off that anybody could do it. Obviously, yeah. I mean, Bodie's performance at 89 is stout. Matthias, I don't know. He's shot a ton of X's the last couple of years. Neems last year, I don't think he missed anything, and he
Right.
didn't even make a medal match.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, those two guys right now certainly have the upper hand when it comes to hitting extra middle. But that there is guys like Jimmy and guys like Stefan and myself that also have that ability and then mentality to do that as well. And I mean, there's obviously some other guys on the list that could certainly potentially throw down a 90, but I don't know. I'm sure it's right around the corner. Will it happen next year? Who knows? But we'll see. Maybe you'll do it. I don't know.
If I get an extra day, if I get 4
Yeah, you
rounds.
shot 90 arrows out of 120 shots. Hey, just don't tell them about the other 30.
Yeah. So, first of all, I don't call out guests often. And if you're watching this, you could see the look on Chris's face. Chris is confident Chris will be the one to shoot the first 90X. Chris is just being nice. Chris is just being, yeah, Chris is not, Chris.
It's tough.
Yeah. And folks, I'll tell you why. Because here's the thing. If you were to ask Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Michael Jordan, if you were to ask anybody from any other sport, who's going to win or who's going to do this or who's going to do that, in every other sport, every single superstar goes, I am. In archery, people consider that to be arrogant. People consider that to be, yeah, I said, Chris, yeah. People consider, so I promise you, Chris's first answer in his head was, I am. He just didn't say it because he's a nice guy and he doesn't want people to think that he's like being arrogant or cocky or any of that stuff. But let me tell you something right here, right now, folks. If you don't have a certain level of extreme self-confidence, cockiness, I don't even have a problem with cocky either. You're not going to shoot at the level that Matthias and Chris and Bodie and Nico do, Mike Slosher, Jesse Broadwater in the day, or Cousins, or any of these Levi's or Danny's. You're not going to shoot at that level unless you have a certain amount of self-confidence. The problem with our sport is they're really not allowed to say it out loud because then a bunch of internet trolls will be like, oh, Chris Perkins said he thinks he's going to be the first one to do it. He's cocky. Well, you know it, Chris. It's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you again. Who's going to be the first guy to shoot 90Xs in Vegas, Chris?
I will say that I can do it. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be the first because, like I said,
right.
I mean, it's a tall order. I mean, I've shot high 80s for a lot of years there, and I don't know. To shoot 330s back to back in Vegas is a tall order. I mean, I was happy with a 29 and a pair of 28s this year, and I'm good with that.
Right.
If I am the first person to shoot a 90, awesome. If I never do it, that's fine with me. I'd just like to stand on top of that podium at some point. So
that was exactly where I was going with this. Was shooting the 90 would be cool, but you'd probably rather shoot an 85 and win.
Yeah. To be the last three out there, I mean, everybody wants to win it. I don't know if the other two guys wanted it as badly as I wanted it this year, but I mean, and that's just because of the situation from years ago, but I don't know. And maybe they do. I don't know, but I know myself and how badly I want to experience that experience.
Right.
One day, hopefully, one day.
It's wild to have the title, to have gotten the check, to have it on your resume, but not have experienced the pageantry of it.
Yeah.
That's a, now that I think about it even more, that's a really weird emotional reconciliation for a guy
Yeah.
to be like, and I've seen you answer this in real life when someone asks about being the Vegas champion. Even you go, oh, yeah, yeah, I am. But even you, in your self description of being a Vegas champion, even you were like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have it, but I don't have it.
Right. Exactly.
Like it doesn't make sense, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes. 100%.
Um, and yeah, and any interview or any podcast that we've talked or anybody else has talked about, they're always like, yeah, 2018 Vegas champ. Yeah, sure. I have the title on a resume, but in my mind, I don't have the title.
100%. Oh, I get
I
it.
don't know.
No, I look,
So
man, that's being realistic about it. And similar to my reaction to the male and female recurve champions, the female champion, the young adult champion, they didn't get their flowers in front of everybody this last weekend. Now that was a production issue.
right.
Brittany and Bruce don't run that or the schedule, but I like what Bruce and Brittany used to do at the South Point was they'd bring out the other champions in front of on the live feed in front of however many people are watching at home and the 5,000
Yeah.
in the arena, and they bring them out and they get to go, and everybody gets their flowers.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to the day that you get that. And
You and me both.
right. And I hope I'll probably be a little choked up too, because you and I have been friends for a long time and we have a lot of really good conversations. I'll probably be a little choked up as well. But whether it's with a microphone or my phone or just in a hug, I'm going to have a couple. I hope I get to be one of the first guys to ask you some questions when that happens, because
Yeah.
you keep your poop in a group pretty damn well emotionally, win, lose, or draw.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure even you are going to be able to hold back when you cross that bridge.
Likely not. Likely not. Yeah.
Exactly. So, well, hey, man, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. By the way, congratulations on the engagement.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
That is great news. Tell us a little bit about your fiance.
Yeah, so she's actually probation and parole officer. That is not how we met. But yeah, she keeps me in line, I think. So yeah, no, she's fantastic. Love her to death, and yeah. So this October we'll be getting married, and yeah, moving forward.
What's her name?
Sarah.
Sarah. And how did you guys
Yeah.
meet?
So she actually worked at the jail in town. There again, that sounds really bad. That's not how we met. But she was friends with a friend of my mom's, and we had kind of connected. And yeah, we've been together for a little over 7 years now, I guess. So
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that. Once October comes and you're married, are you going to keep the Hellcat?
Yeah, that's not going anywhere.
All right, just check. Just throwing that out there, just checking. Well, all right, buddy. I appreciate it. Once again,
All right.
It was so awesome to see you up there lasting through the marathon of the shoot off. You shot absolutely fantastic. You have so much to be proud of there, but let everybody know where they can keep up with Christopher Perkins on the World Wide Webs.
Yeah, so I got Facebook and Instagram. Instagram is cperko501, and Facebook is just Christopher Perkins Professional Archer. So anything archery gets posted to those two pages. Sometimes outside of archery as well gets posted to them. So, but yeah, either one, you'll see where I'm at and what I'm doing.
There you go. All right, everybody. That's Chris Perkins right there. He made yet another Vegas podium at the 2025 event. He stood up there with three other guys, and they They literally had one of the most historic shoot-offs in Vegas history, the first Vegas shoot-off to ever go to inside-out scoring. And so, like Chris said, I don't think the inside-out scoring is going away anytime ever. We needed as a sport um, to modify and adjust some things. 69 arrows shoot-offs is just not conducive. It's not what we need for the promotion of the sport. But absolutely kudos to these guys for doing what they did. Apparently Chris probably had to go to the bathroom. I think that
My phone is about to die.
there we go. So anyway, Chris is one of the good guys out there. And folks, the amount of confidence and self-assuredness that these guys need to perform at this level is part of what allows them to. Michael Jordan or any of these other guys, I make these analogies. I have no problem with these guys being cocky a little bit. Obviously you're not going to hear Chris Perkins say, coming into 2026 Vegas, yeah, I'm going to get my revenge and I'm going to hand it to Bodie this year. That's not necessarily conducive for archery. It's not a team sport. But the amount of self-confidence these guys have, I wish that we could hear a little bit more about that. But it's not a bad thing. It's an absolute good thing. So I want to thank Chris for coming on. I'm sure I'll be talking to Chris again in the future. It's going to be exciting to see what he does in both the ASAs, Reddings, outdoor nationals and stuff, because he's one of the most talented shooters we've ever seen in the sport. His resume proves that, and he's just a nice dude. And so, Canadian jokes aside, they're always nice and all that kind of stuff. But Chris is genuinely a nice dude, but do not get it twisted. He is supremely confident, and he needs to be to shoot at that level. Period. So if he talks to a guy like me or he talks to someone else and you hear a little bit of that confidence come out, appreciate it, because that confidence is what allows him to actually do that. Yes, there's skill involved, but you got to have a level of confidence to get out there and bang with these guys like they do. And I love to see it. I love to see the competitiveness. So, absolutely great having a conversation with him. So that's going to do it for the podcast today, folks. I am going to be trying to round up some of these youngins that had good luck out here in Vegas, and we'll keep doing that. So obviously, if you're out there driving around or whatever you're doing, just be safe. You know the drill. We want to hear from you, not about you. And as always, everybody, love, peace, and chicken grease.
Say yes.